Hey, my name's Gage Heskett, and this is my discussion 9 video about black arts. And the piece I chose was Going to Meet the Man by James Baldwin. This is a fictional piece, and Baldwin is one of the most, or I guess, well-known artists from this movement. So to answer one, what I find most intriguing, I guess, is probably how Baldwin kind of delves into the mind of Jesse, the main character, and how articulate he is in describing what's going on internally with him. And then Baldwin uses distinct and specific language to construct a view of the Jim Crow South from the perspective of Jesse, a racist white policeman. So, like I said, it's from the perspective of Jesse, a racist white policeman, showing the effects of the Jim Crow South on African Americans. And Jesse's development from being a young boy with a black friend to a prejudiced man is one of the key ideas in the story that makes it so effective. His development from a young boy who race didn't mean much to him to now he's a white, or he's a racist person during this racial prejudice time period, I guess you could say. I thought it was interesting how the story comes from a point of view of the racist white man, because when people think, or instead of the perspective of the blacks, because when most people think of these black empowerment pieces, they think it's coming from or they assume it's coming from the point of view of the black author, the black poet, but in this case it's coming from the white man. So I thought that was something pretty interesting that I saw in this piece. So one of the main themes of Going to Meet the Man is that sexual insecurity of racist whites in the Jim Crow South is an origination of their oppression or brutality of black people. So kind of how I came up with that is that the sexual insecurity is because of the idea that in the beginning of the story, Jesse is impotent and can't perform with his wife in bed. So basically Baldwin shows through the characterization of Jesse that the only reason whites realize blacks is because they're threatened by them, I guess in a sexual way, I guess. We see an example of this when Baldwin describes the memory Jesse has of the lynching he experiences with his father when he was a child. I think this is the theme of the poem because it is one of Jesse's main motives in the story. Right at the beginning, he's impotent, he's trying to find a way to perform with his wife, and these flashbacks that we see in the story of brutality of blacks will come into play here. So we see this theme of sexual identity in relation to racism in the story when Jesse recalls when he beats a black prisoner, then is suddenly aroused by it. So he arrests this young civil rights leader, and he reminds him of someone he met at his old job. He remembers him being, ignorant, just very irritative. Sorry. So he remembers him and he beats him. Baldwin writes, "You lucky we pump some white blood into you every once in a while. You're women." He felt, and then I kind of skipped ahead. He felt himself violently stiffen. So this slide is an example of how Jesse recalls on the brutality of blacks. In this case, this civil rights leader, in response to his impotence, he's aroused from the thought of him beating up this black man. So we also see this, and so this is kind of how the theme is seen in this story. In one instance, the next instance that I saw was when Jesse recalls back to the lynching of a black man he went to with his father when he was a young boy. This is kind of the main flashback in the story, the one that's most important in my eyes. Baldwin writes, "The man with the knife took the Blanks privates in his hand, one hand still smiling as though he were weighing them. In the cradle of the one white hand, the Blanks privates seemed as remote as meat being weighed in the scales, but seemed heavier, too much heavier, and Jesse felt his scrotum tighten, and huge, much bigger than his father's flaccid hairless, the largest thing he had ever seen till then, and the blackest." So with this descriptive imagery, that was a lot. I was kind of skipping through that. So with this descriptive and explicit imagery of the black man's genitals here, with that Jesse recalls when he was a child, this relates back to the theme of sexual insecurity. He believes that if he can personify himself with this black man, his physique, that he can perform with his wife. So that's kind of why he thought about that flashback. And then which he does in the end of the story, that's the memory that gives him the will to do, or I guess the ability to do that. So those are two quotes that show how sexual insecurity reflects on the brutality of blacks in the Jim Crow South in this story. Like I said, because of Jesse's fear of empowering blacks. So finally, the theme of this piece can connect back to the big ideas of postmodernism literature, some of the big ideas. One of them is focusing on exteriority. Sorry. While the sexual inferiority in Jesse is more of an internal struggle within him, it all connects back to, how blacks were treated in that environment in the Jim Crow South. It doesn't keep, or it doesn't stay with Jesse. They relate, or Baldwin relates it back to the environment there. Another key idea that connects to the theme is irony. So we see this because while he is somewhat threatened by the black man's sexual prowess, he has a perversive desire to be black. He wants to be black so he can, he wants to have that physique so he can, perform with his wife. But at the same time, he's threatened by him. So that's some irony there in the story. Lastly, a big idea of postmodernism that connects is the theme of fragmentation. And we see this with the plot because it's not, it doesn't stay at that present time when he's in bed with his wife. It goes back and forth from, past to present with these flashbacks that we see in the story. So instead of a linear plot in chronological order, the theme of this piece is seen through a series of flashbacks that go from back and forth from past to present. So that's another big idea of postmodernism that I saw the theme connect to. So that's my discussion there, and hope you got some out of it. Thanks.